an absolutely agonizing plus 1 hour day? Let's take a look. All right, guys. So I did end the day plus 1. But man, was it a struggle. You guys saw me live take a loser. So I was minus 1. Talked about in the live session. Maybe going for a little walk, clearing my mind so that loser didn't affect me. Jumped in FOMO into a quick short. Took another loss, but was able to make a 3R winner to end the day plus 1. But man, was it a struggle. Let's go ahead and take a look at the trade. You'll see today the 12th, so I am green on the day. Last day in the week ending about plus 2 on the week. Not great, but 4 losers, 2 winners, and I still made money, so can't complain about that. Let's take a look. So this was the first trade I took in the live session. You'll see I planned for 2R, ended up minus 1, lost 280. That's the one I took live with you guys. Let's take a look at the trade. So the market opened up here in this area, created a range in the first 30 minutes, including the news. This was the spike down at the news that we had at 10 o'clock. Then price came, and when this candle closed above the close of these candles, so I had a line marked out here, and it closed above, I got in on this pullback here long. I was really basically never up on this trade, only a little bit here, ended up getting stopped out. In the future, I needed not only for this to close above, but I needed for it to break above. It never even broke this high. So I did get into it prematurely. That would be the only change that I would make. I probably just wouldn't have gotten into this trade. Would have been more patient. Maybe gotten in on a breakout above. But that was really it. You guys saw me take it live. Not a trade that I had an issue with. I mean, I accepted the risk when I got into it. I had a decent stop behind like this pivot created just before it broke out, and so it held the first time, but there was no follow through to the upside, and I got stopped out. If we take a quick look at the internals, at the time of the trade is this red dotted line. The advanced decline was starting to break back up. It broke up on the breakout, holding above the 21, and the tick chart, though it was trending down here, and it ended up holding, which is why I got stopped out on this push down. I was able to hold through all this. It was kind of also trending up here, but there was no follow through in my trade, and so that was the first trade for a loser. If we read here real quick, breakout long during the live session. It was a bit premature though. Could have waited for the candle to close above the high, or at least break that high before getting in. Right, I said it did close above the other closes, but it didn't break the high. And so it's a trade that I could have possibly been more patient on in the future. My plan did allow for me to take that trade, but maybe I need to make some adjustments in the future going forward, right? And so that was my first trade there, a 1R loser. And then very quickly, let's actually, right, I got out of this first trade at at 10:40. That was the first trade I took. I got stopped out at around 10:40. Got in the next one at 10:53. So it was a straight FOMO trade. I have no excuses. I didn't wait for confirmation, which is what we talked about in the entire live session. You guys were asking me about waiting for confirmation or waiting for confirmation, and I talked about it. And I did not wait for confirmation in this trade. And so let's just take a quick look at the trade. It was a 1R loser, plan 2R. I lost $315, so now I was down $600 on the day, $595 on the day. You'll see here, this was the first trade I got in long. I got stopped out. It pulled back here, and I got in. That's really all I can say about that. Got in short, got stopped out when it finally did break the high, close above, did everything I was waiting for in the initial trade. This trade came, tested this trend line, didn't break it. I got, it was a FOMO trade. Nothing else I can say about that. Really, I needed to see, I kind of use this as my confirmation, breaking that low there to say, okay, this is going to want to go short. Really, this needed to be a much better leg out, and then a pullback, which was the confirmation I needed. What I needed was a leg out, right? It pushed down, it push, exhaustion, and then we just didn't get another leg out to have a really good pullback area. I just got in on this pullback here, got stopped out fairly quickly. In this, I did have my stop up here above the pivot. This was actually the stop out, this dot here, and then I got back in on the pullback long, right? This was the trade that ended up working out for me. I made 3R on. So the end of this trade, though, I was down 2R. Normally I go for 2-to-1 trades, so now my next trade was just going to bring me back to break even on the day. So I was a bit more aggressive. If we take a look at the internals at the time of the trade, that was this, this push down. I got in on these dotted lines here, and so the advanced decline was in my favor. It broke to new lows and pulled back to here, and it hadn't crossed above the 21 EMA when I got into the trade. The tick chart, it broke to a new low when I got stopped out of my first trade. Pulled back, didn't go to a new high up here or anything, gave a nice rejection, and so that was kind of like, oh, this is going to want to come back down, let me jump in, and that was the FOMO right there. Like, when I went and checked this, saw that rejection candle, jumped into that trade, and it was terrible, just terrible. So let's go and take a look at the third trade, which was a much better trade. My first trade was fine, just the second trade wasn't. So I wrote here, I took a loss in the same setup as this one earlier in the morning. It pulled back and stopped me out, and I had to take it again when the setup came up again. I was aggressive with add-ons because the second trade, which was a FOMO trade, took a loss, so I was down 2R when this trade setup occurred. The original trade setup for 2R was perfect. Trying to squeeze 3R was excruciating. The trade took over 3 hours. It took like 3.5 hours, slowly grinding its way up. The original trade of 2-to-1 only took 1.5 hours, but I had to sit through 3.5 hours of this trade, which was outrageous. That's all I can say about that. And so this is the trade. The original breakout trade here, got stopped out, got in short, got stopped out. This one closed above. Internals were all pretty bullish, and so I got in on this pullback. Took a little bit of heat early on the pullback. Maybe could have had a little bit better of an entry, but I had my risk behind the 5-minute candle, as I like to do, and so this was that was the trade. Now, this screenshot here is after I had already added on. So I got in the trade, had the pullback, price shot up, gave another micro pullback, and I added on 2 contracts here. That's why I have 2 different stops here, and I'm in for 12 contracts. And I actually had another add-on after this. Like I said, I was trying to be aggressive, trying to squeeze 3R out of this trade to end the day positive and not just end the day break even. And so this is where I added on the second time. It pulled back again, and when it broke these highs, I added on 2 more contracts. So you'll see here I'm in for 14 contracts. Now, this was my original target for the first 10 contracts. Man, I got in this trade at 11:05 around there, 11:06. We're now talking an hour later. Price went sideways for oh so long before it finally broke out. came up to this target, and then let's see if I have it on the next slide. I do not, but this is where I got out of my 10 contracts, which was my original 2-to-1 target. And so I got rid of my original 10 contracts at 2-to-1. You'll see that price had already gone through that 2-to-1 in this candle, then tried to push up again, and then it just chopped around. And I had my target up here, and I just said, screw it. I wasn't going to, if I took that 2-hour winner right there, I was going to be break even on the day, right? And so I moved my target down, and I got out right there with my original 10 contracts, and now I had 4 contracts still on. I ended up being very glad that I got out of those 10 contracts because it went sideways. This is a 5-minute chart now. 5-minute. It went sideways for the next like 30 to 40 minutes and would not have hit my target, which was just above even this candle. I think finally either this red or this green candle would have filled me in, which was like 45 minutes to an hour later. And so this trade was just dragged on forever. It was a miserable way for me to spend my Friday. Luckily, the trade did work out completely, though. So I think in the next couple of candles, it did hit this. It did get out of these 2 contracts for $100. So this was going to put me at $700, and then my first 10 contracts made $600, brought me back to break even because I was minus 600, and then this was plus 100 and plus 200 to make it plus 300 on the day. I had to split these up. This blue line was the high. Actually, I have it on a 15-minute. I took a screenshot of it. Okay, so this is a 15-minute chart now, and this is where I got out of my original 10 contracts, and you'll see then I had 4 contracts left. For me to make 1R was going to be this blue line, but the blue line was above yesterday's high here, so I ended up splitting up the 4 contracts. I took 10 points here, and then this was 20 points to make my $300. I said, okay, I'm going to take 2 of them off, half off before this high. If it rejects at this high, I at least locked in $100 and don't waste the entire trade. And it did go through. I mean, it hit those 2 contracts and those 2 contracts. So that's how I ended up plus 1R. It was excruciating. This is how long the trade was. I got in way back here. This was the first add-on, this was the second add-on, this was the first target, and this was the final target. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous. What I wanted to show here was that when I got into the trade, the dollar started coming down and was holding this trend line. I did have a scare here on this pullback. Fortunately, this is where I was... Nope, this was the add-on. This is where I was able to, I believe, scale out of the first contract. 1, 2, 3... Yeah, well, this is where I got out of the 10 contracts, and then the 2 contracts, and the last 2 contracts. I mean, painful. I had to sit through this pullback, but didn't break like any levels. It did break that pivot, which made me nervous, and I had this trend line that it was following. Then it broke back down and worked out for my trade. And then I also had, I was long, so I needed the VIX to be going down, and the VIX held this trend line as well for most of my trade. Then it just chopped around and went sideways. But these 2 things gave me confidence in the trade, to not move my stop too tight and do something stupid like that. I was paying very much attention to this chart, and I was paying very much attention to... Do I not have it? There we go. To the 4 major indexes. So I have the ES up here, what I was in. I got in here on this dotted line. This is the Russell, this is the YM, and this is the NQ. And what gave me some confidence was that even though price was up here, my target was right up by these highs, and I was like, oh shit. right? I have supply here. It's going to turn my price around. But when I come over here and look at the NQ was here, had plenty of room to go still to test these highs. So the NQ gave me some confidence, especially when this candle finally broke this range. It did chop around for a little bit after that, but then continued to go up. So I had confidence here. I was like, started to get nervous because this sideways action was this sideways action here. Could very easily have reversed. We were already up near these highs. And then same thing here with the Russell. The Russell was making me nervous because it was at the high here as well. But when it finally broke the high, I think this broke the high. Gave me confidence that this would continue to go up and help the ES go up. And then the same thing with the Dow. The Dow went sideways, and when it finally broke, was when my trade hit final target. The Dow actually, when it went sideways, it still had a little bit more room to go to really get to the highs. But what really gave me the confidence was the fact that the NQ still had room to the highs, and then the Russell broke this previous day high. And so that helped me not tighten up my stop too tight and get stopped out for some dumb reason. And so that was my that's my recap today. Plus 1R, but it was excruciating, like I said, to sit through all of that. If I wouldn't have taken the FOMO trade, I would have had a quick 2R trade and would have been plus 1 on the day fairly quickly. Right here. No, those were my add-ons, sorry. Right here. Would have gotten in long here. And, yeah, it would have taken an hour and a half, but it wouldn't have taken 3.5 hours. And so, I got to do better. Got to work on myself, not jump into trades. FOMO is my biggest killer. I don't necessarily get triggered by losses or anything like that. It's just like the fear of missing out. And that'll do it. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Catch you guys back here on Monday. Hopefully Franco will be back. And 9 a.m. pre-market analysis. 9:25 we go live. Thanks again for joining us, guys. Take care.